Welcome to the IWP podcast, coming to you live from the Institute of World Politics in Washington, D.C. I'm Jim Robbins, Dean of Academics at IWP, an accredited graduate school of national security, intelligence, and international affairs, offering a variety of certificates, master's degrees, and doctorates, both in person and online. You can check out our programs and our courses at our website, iwp.edu. The topic today is the ongoing conflict in Gaza, and in particular, what happens after the conflict ends. Last week, Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, issued a document entitled The Day After Hamas Principles, outlining an approach to post-conflict Gaza. Among them are, Israel's military will stay in Gaza as long as it takes to demilitarize it and eliminate Hamas. Israel also reserves the right to intervene later to prevent the remilitarization of Gaza. Israel will play a greater role with Egypt in controlling Gaza's southern border, creating buffer zones to prevent smuggling and further attacks. The UN Relief and Works Agency, or UNRWA, the UN's aid agency in Gaza and the West Bank, will be disbanded and replaced. Gazan religious, educational, and welfare institutions will be deradicalized. Gaza will be run by Palestinian experts and technocrats with no ties to terrorism. And there will be no agreement with the Palestinians except in negotiation with Israel, and no unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state. These are very basic principles, not quite a plan, but a list of solutions-oriented requirements for Israel to move forward in the post-war period, whenever that comes. When you talk about demilitarization and deradicalization, these seem like fairly obvious objectives. Also, getting rid of UNRWA, which is perceived as corrupt and compromised, and bringing in Palestinians to run Gaza, who are professionals and not terrorists, seems highly reasonable. But most U.S. pundits immediately rejected the plan. Because, of course, what do you expect? The drift in the U.S. is towards the White House effort to tie conflict resolution to a pathway to Palestinian independence, in essence using the war to implement the two-state solution. Some more adventurous liberals are even talking up formal U.S. diplomatic recognition of the existing Palestinian government, which is the reason why Netanyahu preemptively rejected such unilateralism. In one sense, this posture is nothing new. Pursuit of the two-state dream has been U.S. policy since the Oslo Accord of 1993. Israel accepted the PLO as the representative of the Palestinians, and the PLO said they would renounce terrorism and recognize Israel's right to exist in peace. Both sides agreed that a Palestinian Authority would be established and assume governing responsibilities in the West Bank and Gaza Strip over a 5-year period. They could then sort out the thorny issues of borders, refugees, the right of return, and the final status of Jerusalem. But decades of patient diplomacy never achieved this. And it was conducted by more able U.S. diplomats led by more competent presidents of both parties. The two states idea foundered on politics, continuing hostilities, entrenched positions, and simple exhaustion. So how can a two-state solution be a precondition to end an ongoing crisis when it was unattainable under far more favorable circumstances? That is, how can this really be the solution? It's not realistic, but not the first time Mr. Biden has floated utopian plans. Back in 2007, then Senator Biden proposed solving the sectarian conflict in Iraq by dividing the country into 3 semi-autonomous zones overseen by a weak central government, a plan that would have in fact increased sectarian and ethnic division by formalizing it, as well as heightening resource competition. Because where you draw the lines on the map in Iraq also determines access to oil fields, gas fields, pipeline routes, roads, water, and other important things. Iraqis would continue to fight over these things, but with no strong central government to serve as a platform for hashing out compromise. It was a bad plan that no one wanted, and it never had a chance. The issue of drawing lines on the map is also one of the failure points of the Israel-Palestine peace process. How many proposed two-state maps have we seen over the years? The PA wants a border on the 1949 ceasefire line, the so-called Green Line, or the Auschwitz borders, a phrase inspired by Israel's former UN ambassador Abba Eban. The U.S. has favored a border based on the Green Line, but with land swaps to acknowledge that much has happened since 1967. There has been growth and development, construction and agriculture. Israel would not willingly give up East Jerusalem or its suburbs, but the Palestinians insist that this will be their capital. So how much swapping would there be? How many square miles and where? The proposals are endless, as are the debates. We're talking about an area, West Bank and Gaza, 2,400 square miles, about the size of Delaware. And the lands in dispute are a fraction of that total area. So it's amazing how heated the arguments can be over these small parcels. It's hardly worth it, you'd think. But both sides would disagree. We have to understand that the talk of tying conflict resolution to the two-state proposal is partly driven by American politics. It's an election year, and President Biden has to consider the left wing of his party, the progressives who hate Israel, the squad that thinks Israel is an illegitimate settler colonial experiment. Even the two-state solution doesn't go far enough for them. They, like Hamas, would rather have a one-state solution, a final solution, from the river to the sea. So the White House effort is an attempt to show the progressives that the president is open to some type of pro-Palestinian proposal, even as the U.S. continues to arm and support Israel at war. Okay, so assuming you were pursuing a two-state solution, how do you do it? Israel is busy fighting and is uninterested in having that discussion. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Authority is not a useful negotiation partner either. President Mahmoud Abbas is corrupt and disliked. He is 88 years old, reportedly sick and with failing memory. And you think we have problems. Plus, Abbas is in the 19th year of a 4-year term of office and refuses to hold elections. But it's just as well, because any such election would benefit Hamas. The terrorists are highly popular in the West Bank. A poll last December showed that 82% of people in the West Bank supported the October 7th Hamas attacks, and 90% want Abbas to resign. Reportedly, Hamas is interested in forming a unity government with the PA to rule the eventual Palestinian state, or so say their back channels in Qatar. But remember, Hamas entered into a unity government agreement with the PA in 2007, shortly before they seized control of Gaza by force, so don't fall for that one again. Anyway, these are not practical conditions to resurrect the peace process. Besides, are the Palestinians even up to the task of running a state? Are there peace-loving, rational, forward-thinking people willing to back off the extremist posture and make compromises? And if so, where are they? Remember that Gaza was an experiment in land for peace, a preview of the two-state solution. Israel dismantled its settlements and withdrew from the Strip in 2005, seeking to unfreeze the stalled peace process. This gave Palestinians an opportunity to prove that they were ready for statehood, that they could self-rule, that they had the ability to build a civil society, that they could prosper under their own efforts, that they could, in fact, live in peace. Imagine what Gaza could have been, with rule of law, property rights, education, investment. After all, billions of dollars were pouring in from the international community. Imagine if that money had been used wisely. Imagine if land for peace really did bring peace. Look at some of the regional success stories. Tel Aviv was just sand dunes in 1909. Dubai kicked off an amazing urban expansion in the 1990s. Look at Neom, the planned city in western Saudi Arabia that is just getting going. Why couldn't Gaza replicate those efforts, become a shining city on the Med? Well, because of Hamas. After much infighting, Hamas seized power in 2007. Moderate Palestinians in Gaza, to the extent there were any, were purged, run out, or killed. Hamas used the billions in international aid to turn Gaza into an armed camp, a rocket launching pad, with terror tunnels 3 times the mileage of the entire D.C. metro system. Arms were brought in from Iran and elsewhere. Children in UN schools were educated in hate and anti-Semitism. Millions of dollars were lost to graft and embezzlement. It was the opposite of what was intended. And this was 100% the choice of Hamas, plus those Gazans who backed them, and the international community who let it continue. So now there's a chance to reset and start again. Hamas will be deposed, its evil leadership eliminated one way or another, along with other violent radicals. The terror infrastructure will be dismantled. UNRWA will be shut down. Find another way to distribute aid, another way to teach children without creating a new generation of terrorists. Who can object to all that? On what grounds? This is what peace looks like. And let Israel erect a security structure to prevent not only another October 7th, but any attacks launched from Gaza. No country in the world should have to put up with a permanent state of conflict like that. And if the Palestinian government is too weak or too corrupt or too incompetent or too hate-filled to stop the violence, the Israelis will have to take care of it. Maybe there are Palestinians willing to work with Israel to create true peace. Maybe there are Palestinians who can bring good governance to Gaza. Maybe there are investors who will rebuild Gaza in a way that looks to a future of prosperity based on sound economic principles, not dependence on international handouts. Maybe these people exist. If so, they should come forward, because they are the only ones who can make the two states into a solution. But to get there, well, first the war has to end. The death and destruction in Gaza could stop today if the Hamas leaders would simply surrender. They are wholly to blame for the continuance of the war. They are the only ones who benefit from Palestinian suffering, and they don't care at all how many people have to die for their cause. Hamas started the war. They have continued the war. They refuse to end the war. So post-war planning is fine, but getting there won't be easy. And Hamas will see to that. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this podcast, please share and subscribe. For IWP, I'm Jim Robbins. Join us next week for another edition of the IWP Podcast.